in a world. Alright, so, to start, oops. The story begins on the faraway planet of Draenor. Draenor was inhabited by orcs as well as Draenei, who got along relatively peacefully. Then, one day, Ner'zhul, the orc chieftain, was visited by the ghost of his dead wife. She convinced him to unite all the orc clans. And the four war chiefs that he goes to do so are Grom, Hellscream, Chief Blackhand, Kargath Bladefist, and Kilrog Deadeye. At this time, the orcs generally were shamanistic and believed in the magical powers of nature and the four elemental forces: air, water,
Go
fire,
shaman!
and earth. Whoop whoop! Four primal elementals from each of the schools approached Ner'zhul and informed him that he had not in fact been visited by his dead wife, but instead that he was being tricked by a demon lord, one we're pretty familiar with, named Kil'jaeden. Ner'zhul then resigned as the war chief of Draenor, and Gul'dan, his runner-up, took his place. Gul'dan was noticeably evil, though, and none of the four war chiefs respected him as leader. Gul'dan was, unapologetically evil. His main goal was to sell the orcs' free will to the demons that tricked Ner'zhul, so Kil'jaeden, in order to obtain power through their fell blood and their dark magics. In order to stay in power, though, Gul'dan got Blackhand to be his official leader while he pulled the strings in the background. Gul'dan tricked the orcs to drink the fell blood, and they started to go crazy with bloodlust in their newfound strength. With this newfound strength, they massacred nearly all of the Draenei on Draenor, and even started fighting one another. Gul'dan discussed this with his demon masters, Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, and they instructed him to create a powerful dark portal in order to transport the orcs to a new land that they could conquer. Gul'dan led the orcs through the dark portal off of Draenor and on to a new world called Azeroth. That's really loud. On the southern continent of this new world, and on the eastern continent, and the southern part of that continent, called the Eastern Kingdoms, lied a city called Stormwind. This city, then, was ruled by King Lane with his two advisors. One of his advisors was Anduin Lothar. He was the greatest knight that had ever lived. Medivh, his second advisor, was the greatest wizard to ever live. The three had eventually got wind that green monsters seemed to have popped out of nowhere and have been terrorizing towns all across the continent. This, if you've ever heard of it, is what's called the Great War, and it's basically just a ton of fights between Anduin Lothar, who was the commander, and Blackhand, who was the commander that Gul'dan was pretty much having be the face of his orcs. Anduin and Lane, King Lane, so Anduin Lothar and King Lane, had eventually learned that Medivh, the wizard, had been possessed by a demon named Sargeras, and had actually helped to create the dark portal that let the orcs, the corrupted fell orcs with the demon blood, into Azeroth. Anduin Lothar set out to find Medivh, and in that time, Blackhand and the orcs attacked Stormwind, King Lane had been assassinated, and the city's defenses fell. Gul'dan eventually learned that Blackhand had took over Stormwind, but to his dismay, also learned that Blackhand was assassinated by another orc named Orgrim Doomhammer. Ooh, I pressed the wrong thing on my notes, 1 second. Whee. Orgrim Doomhammer had assassinated Blackhand, Gul'dan's puppet, following the victory over Stormwind. Doomhammer did this because of his hatred for Gul'dan and all things demon magic. Gul'dan eventually learned that Doomhammer even killed all of his warlocks, saying that the Horde used to have honor and he ruined it for everybody. Doomhammer threatened to kill Gul'dan unless he made himself useful and spared his life temporarily. This was in large part because Gul'dan pointed out that the orcs had nothing to fight the human wizards with. And as he's pointing this out, he goes over to the corpse of one of the human knights and resurrects them, putting the soul of one of the orc warlocks within them and creating one of the first Death Knights. Doomhammer accepts this fact and lets Gul'dan live, but keeps his place as the war chief of the Horde. After this conflict, the remaining humans fled, most of which to the northern continent, specifically to the kingdom of Lordaeron, and the capital city of Lordaeron, which was named Capital City, confusingly. In Lordaeron, King Taranis Menethil II is the king, and after Anduin and Khadgar, who was one of Medivh's apprentices, arrived in the city, they told him of the situation of the orcs, and he started uniting all the kingdoms to fight against the orcs. Of important note, Dalen Proudmoore, who is Jaina Proudmoore's dad, leader of Kultiras, Archmage Antonidas of the Kirin Tor, Anasterian Sunstrider of Silvermoon, and Alincist Fowl, Archbishop of the Church of the Light, were four of the main people that he rallied for this alliance. Other less noteworthy were Gen Greymane of Gilneas, Thoris Trollbane of Stormguard, Aiden Paranold of Alterock. This alliance army, led by Anduin Lothar, formed together to defend against the approaching horde. The holy priests, led by Alincist Fowl, offered a counter to Gul'dan's Death Knights. They decided to fight the demon magic with holy magic, and sent in some of the first Knights of the Silver Hand to help with the Alliance army. Ooh, that's the wrong way. Some of the most noteworthy Knights of the Silver Hand was Uther the Lightbringer, Tyrion Fordring, Alexandros Mograine the Ashbringer, and Turalyon, who's the Lieutenant of the Alliance. Alright. One sec, I have two things of music playing. Let me try to find it. 2 seconds. There we go. Bam. Alright. And this began the Second War. Anduin and Turalyon were the main commanders of the Alliance army, combating Doomhammer's horde. Doomhammer's team teamed up with Zul'jin's Amani trolls, as well as... Oh, never mind, spoilers. Oh no, never mind. So Doomhammer teamed up with Zul'jin's Amani trolls, as well as some red dragons. And Turalyon teamed up with Dwarven Griffin Riders. Zul'jin eventually convinced Doomhammer to assault Quel'Thalas, the home of the High Elves, which was left with very few defenses, as they were mostly... playing with the music, there we go. As they were mostly sent out to join the Alliance. The city mostly in ruins, um, with the very, very few um, elven defenses. Eventually got saved by Turalyon and the rest of the Alliance, and Zul'jin and Doomhammer eventually abandoned that assault, and with the help of Aiden Perinold of Alterac, one of the leaders of the Alliance, sneakily let them through a secret passageway towards Capital City in Lordaeron, while Turalyon was still recouping at Quel'Thalas. Anduin Lothar um, was defending the city at the time, and he kept the Horde at bay, but their defenses were slowly breaking. During this fight, Gul'dan heard of an ancient demon artifact that would make him a god, and he took a small clan called the Stormreaver clan to Lost Islands in search of it. Gul'dan eventually arrives at these islands, at what he did not know at the time was the tomb of Sargeras. He unknowingly was hunting the Eye of Sargeras, which indeed was a great and powerful demon artifact. However, when he opened up the tomb, him and his Stormreaver clan were devoured by the powers that waited inside. So back in Lordaeron, the Doomhammer's army, continuing to assault Capital City, was eventually routed by Turalyon and the rest of the Alliance, including Illyrian Windrunner from Quel'Thalas and Kurdran Wildhammer with Dwarven Griffin Riders, and they pretty quickly pushed Doomhammer out of Lordaeron. Doomhammer and the remaining orcs flee to Black Rock Mountains. The Alliance pursues Doomhammer, and they clash near the base of Blackrock. Doomhammer defeats Anduin Lothar in battle, and Turalyon, enraged by the death of his mentor, captures Doomhammer and the majority of his orcs. The orcs were rallied up, brought to internment camps, and thus concluded the end of the Third War, or the Second War. However, back in Draenor, Ner'zhul was once again roused to save the orcs. Terran Gorfin, led by Ner'zhul, teams up with Deathwing, the aspect of the Black Dragon Flight, to get a few powerful artifacts for a ritual that they will soon perform. Ner'zhul and his remaining orcs that were on Draenor all hold up in Black Temple. Here, Ner'zhul uses these artifacts to royally fuck up a ritual, destroying Draenor and killing everyone on the planet, including Turalyon, Illyria, Kurdran Wildhammer, and most of the Alliance army who were pursuing Ner'zhul, at least temporarily. And then we cut to an internment camp. Orgrim Doomhammer, who was captured and kept in one of these internment camps, eventually escaped and fled into the wilds. However, within Old Hillsbrad, within Durnhold Keep, one of the internment camps, a master named Aedalos Blackmore takes specifically to one of his orc prisoners. He wanted to have a personal gladiator that had the strength and tenacity of an orc, but all the strategy and intellect of a human. This young orc's name was Thrall. When he grew older, Thrall escaped Durnhold and happened across Orgrim Doomhammer and Grom Hellscream. They tell Thrall of his parents, as well as the old ways of the orcs, embracing the elements and warning him that many of his brothers had fell to demon magics. Thrall ventured out to find his father, Drekthar, and his old clan, the Frostwolves. He eventually does find them, and they teach him how to be a shaman. Thrall eventually comes back and finds Doomhammer and Hellscream once again, and they team up to liberate as many internment camps as possible. They successfully liberate a handful, and then make their way back to Durnhold Keep where Thrall was held. They liberate the camp, but towards the end of the liberation, Doomhammer is killed in battle. With his final breaths, Doomhammer gives Thrall his weapon, aptly named Doomhammer, and claims Thrall should be the new war chief of the Horde. Thrall and Hellscream continue liberating camps and dodging Alliance forces within the Arathi Highlands. And then, transitioning back to Kalimdor, but this time, 10,000 years ago. Long, long ago, the continents were one, and that continent was called Kalimdor, similar to Pangaea. Kalimdor was mainly populated by the Kaldorei Kingdom, the Night Elf Empire. The Night Elves were heavy magic users, and they gained their power from the Well of Eternity. The Night Elf Queen, Queen Ashara, was convinced by a demon lord named Sargeras to summon the demons into their world. However, a small band of heroes rose up against Ashara and her demons. Those heroes were Tyrande Whisperwind, Priestess of Elune, Cenarius, the God of the Wild, and brothers Illidan and Malfurion Stormrage. Together, using holy magic from the moon and druidic magic from nature, they fought against Ashara and her followers, who were called the Highborn. They were mainly rich night elves that wanted to embrace the demons and the power that they could give. The apex of the battle took place at Mount Hyjal. Here, Ashara had planned to summon Sargeras into the world using the power of the Well of Eternity. More and more Night Elves had sided with the four heroes, but they were too late. Countless demons, including Manaroth, Hakar the Houndmaster, and other Burning Legion spawn had been summoned into Kalimdor. The four heroes now teamed up with several demigods, several other Night Elf leaders, most of the dragons, including Ysura, Malygos, Alexstrasza, and Nozdormu, and many more, all teamed up at Mount Hyjal to push back the demon forces. The four heroes, with all the help, eventually pushed to the Well of Eternity and destroy it. After destroying the Well of Eternity, Kalimdor was ripped in two, the western continent still remaining Kalimdor, and the eastern continent, now known as the Eastern Kingdoms. Along with this tear in the continent, the Night Elves had lost a lot of their power, but luckily the dragons, who had helped them, had created for them a world tree which would grant them immortality. However, before the Well of Eternity was destroyed, Illidan's Stormrage grabbed several vials of its water, and not soon after he attempted to recreate the well, and was imprisoned by Malfurion, his brother, for doing so. The Night Elves then returned to their peaceful life in Kalimdor. And this is not the battle for Mount Hyjal that we do in the Caverns of Time. This is a separate event. And returning to Lordaeron. King Tyrannus Menethil II is still King of Lordaeron, and his son, Arthas Menethil, has recently, in his newfound adulthood, become a paladin under the tutelage of Uther the Lightbringer. Arthas had a girlfriend named Jaina Proudmoore once, but Arthas was too wrapped up in his training, and Jaina too focused on her studies to become one of the most powerful wizards in the world, just like her father had been, to have anything become of this relationship. Arthas, at this point in time, had spent his days helping those in need, training as a Knight of the Silver Hand under Uther the Lightbringer, killing trolls, orcs, and more, and generally doing good for Lordaeron, which he, being the son of the king, had the rightful heir as prince to. And this is where Lordaeron left off. But back on Draenor, it turned out that when Ner'zhul ripped apart the world, he had actually been teleported to the realm of the demon lords. Here, Kil'jaeden tortured Ner'zhul, ripped his spirit from his body, and placed him in a giant block of ice on Azeroth, on Northrend. Ner'zhul, now a tool of the Burning Legion, had one goal: to tear apart anyone who would stand in the Burning Legion's way. And this is all the lore leading up to Warcraft 3. The Reign of Chaos begins with a young thrall in the Rathi Highlands, temporarily separated from Hellscream, is busy rallying as many orcs as he can. He, opposed to Gul'dan, Doomhammer, and many of the other orcs, has for the most part broken free of any sort of corruption, and is far more concerned in finding the orcs a home to call their own, rather than battling against the humans. Thrall receives a vision from a prophet, coming to him in the form of a raven, telling him that the Burning Legion is invading Azeroth, and he must take the horde to the western continent of Kalimdor. Thrawn, meeting up again with Hellscream, follow the prophet's advice and do just that. Following this prophet, he then goes to Dalaran, where Archmage Antonidas resides, and the prophet fails to convince him to do the same as Thrall did, lead the people of Dalaran to Kalimdor. Jaina Proudmoore, one of Antonidas' most promising pupils, overhears this. She is then, after voicing her concerns, ignored and sent towards Lordaeron to investigate the rumors of a plague that seems to be spreading. We cut back to King Taranis Menethil II. The prophet once again returns and is thrown out of the city and fails to convince the king to bring his people to Kalimdor. The king, too, is far more concerned about rumors of the plague and sends word to his son, Arthas Menethil, to investigate. Arthas, at the time, is away fighting orcs of the Burning Blade, who are killing villagers and sacrificing them to dark lords near Stranbrad. Arthas is doing so, again, with his paladin mentor, Uther the Lightbringer of the Silver Hand, who tells him that the demonic rituals are nothing but superstition. Eventually, after defeating the orcs, Jaina meets up with Arthas and tells him of the rumors of the plague, and they set off to investigate. Jaina points out at one of the cities, as they enter, that one of the seals on the... I skipped a line, sorry. Never mind, I didn't. Jaina Proudmoore and Arthas go into one of the cities, and after seeing many people sick, many corpses, they come across a grain shipment that bears the seal of Anderhall, one of the greatest grain distributors in the land. They eventually figure out that this grain, decaying and infecting the people all around Lordaeron, has spread far and wide in the kingdoms, and there's no telling how many people had been infected. After battling through what they now see as many of the villagers and people of Lordaeron turning into undead, they run into a necromancer who seems responsible. This necromancer, leader of what he calls the Cult of the Damned, is named Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad tells Arthas that the Scourge will wipe out all of the living, and that if he wants to stop them, he must go to the city of Stratholme and confront the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis. After this encounter, Arthas continues to watch many of his own people turn in dead before his own eyes. Uther, Jaina, and Arthas all start to make their way to Stratholme. On the way, the Prophet stops them and pleads with them to flee to Kalimdor with as many humans as they can. He claims that all of the Eastern Kingdom is lost, and there's nothing they can do. Jaina tells Arthas that she senses great power within the Prophet, and that he may be right. Arthas tells her and the Prophet that nothing will make him abandon his home and his land. He doesn't care if the Prophet can see the future. He's going to Stratholme, and he's going to kill this Dreadlord Mal'Ganis. Uther meets back up with the pair, and the three head to Stratholme. When they arrive, though, they learn it's too late. Everyone in the city has been infected. They may look human now, but it won't be long until they turn into the undead.
Glad you could make it, Uther.
Watch your tone with me, boy. You may be the prince, but I'm still your superior as a paladin.
As if I could forget. Listen, Uther. There's something about the plague you should know. Oh no. We're too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's just a matter of time before they turn into the undead. This entire city must be purged.
What? How can you even consider that? There's got to be some other way.
Damn it, Uther. As your future king, I order you to purge this city.
You are not my king yet, boy. Nor would I obey that command even if you were.
Then I must consider this an act of treason.
Treason? Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
Have I? Lord Uther, by my right of succession and the sovereignty of my crown, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend your paladins from service.
Arthas, you can't just...
It's done. Those of you who have the will to save this land, follow me. The rest of you, get out of my sight.
You've just crossed a terrible threshold, Arthas.
Jaina?
I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this.
Of course.
Let's move in.
After Arthas declares a purge on the city, Uther and Jaina refuse to participate in the slaughter of civilians. Arthas claims better that his people die by his hand than serve as Mal'Ganis' slaves in their death. When Jaina and Uther leave, Arthas lays siege to the city, purging it and killing everyone inside. But before he can kill Mal'Ganis, Mal'Ganis escapes and tells Arthas that if he really wants to defeat the Scourge, he'll have to battle him in the frozen continent of Northrend. Arthas moves his forces to Northrend, and there he meets an old friend, Myrddin Bronzebeard, and his dwarven riflemen and griffin riders. One of Arthas' lieutenants points out to Arthas how bitingly cold the Forsaken Land is, but notices that Arthas is hardly shaking. Myrddin tells Arthas that they are looking for a powerful and ancient artifact there, a rune blade called Frostmourne. He tells him it's hidden away far in an ancient vault that can only be accessed by a forgotten rune gate. Nearly halfway through the expedition, Myrddin tells Arthas that they should retreat, Arthas says otherwise. Myrddin starts to gather up his men to leave, and Arthas sneaks off to burn all their boats, pretending that the undead had done so. With no way to escape, Myrddin agrees to push through with Arthas through the undead to find Frostmourne, nearly all of their men dying in the process. A Frost Revenant guards the vault to the blade and tells Arthas that he's not trying to protect the sword, but instead trying to protect Arthas from the sword.
Turn back, mortals. Death and darkness are all that await you in this forsaken vault.
I doubt there's anything down here more terrifying than what we've faced already.
Believe what you will, boy. You shall not pass.
Let's get...
Behold, Myrddin, our salvation. Frostmourne.
Halt, lad. There's an inscription on the dais. It's a warning. It says, "Whomsoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit." Oh, I should have known. The blade is cursed. Let's get the hell out of here.
I would gladly bear any curse to save my homeland.
Oh, leave it be, Arthas. Forget this business and lead your men home.
Damn the men! Nothing shall prevent me from having my revenge, old friend. Not even you. Now, I call out to the spirits of this place. I will give anything or pay any price, if only you will help me save my people.
When they finally find the sword, Myrddin tells Arthas that he senses darkness surrounding the blade and that they should flee with what's left of their people. Arthas refuses, saying that he will bear any curse to save his people and protect his homeland. And as he pulls the blade from the ice, the power that emanates kills Myrddin in the process. Alone and wielding the rune blade Frostmourne, Arthas slaughters the undead in his path towards Mal'Ganis. All along the way, Arthas hears dark whispers coming from the blade. He finally defeats Mal'Ganis, but is lost in the process. Arthas returns home to Lordaeron, but is corrupted by the dark whispers of the whispers of the Dark Lord within the blade. Returning to Lordaeron.
my son. You no longer need to sacrifice for your people. You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown. I've taken care of everything.
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
This kingdom shall fall, and from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundations of the world.
Arthas returns to his father and kills him, laying siege to the capital city with the Scourge army now under his control. He uses the corpses of his people to bolster up his forces and reform the Cult of the Damned, originally controlled by Kel'Thuzad. He also reunites with his ghost, Kel'Thuzad's ghost. Kel'Thuzad tells Arthas that he needs the power of the Sunwell to properly be resurrected, which is the font of power that's currently used by the High Elves in Silvermoon. Before they set off, Arthas must retrieve a magical urn to preserve Kel'Thuzad's ashes. This urn currently holds his father's ashes and is guarded by Uther and many other Knights of the Silver Hand.
This crude can be laid the
Seem a very but
very.
Your father ruled this land for 70 years, and you've ground it to dust in a matter of days.
Very dramatic, Uther. Give me the urn, and I'll make sure you die quickly.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthas. What? Were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
After killing Uther and retrieving this urn, Kel'Thuzad's ghost and Arthas assault Silvermoon, in the process defeating Sylvanas Windrunner, the Ranger General of Silvermoon, and turning her into a banshee. Arthas pushes to the Sunwell, using it to bring Kel'Thuzad back not as a necromancer, but as a powerful lich, corrupting and destroying the High Elves' Sunwell in the process. Kel'Thuzad tells Arthas that the Lich King, the one whispering to him in the blade, is a prisoner of the Burning Legion, and his job is to weaken the armies of Azeroth so the Burning Legion can annihilate the world. Kel'Thuzad and Arthas then steal the Book of Medivh, which lies in Dalaran, and leave the city destroyed, and use it to summon Archimonde, a great demon lord and the leader of the invasion. We then cut back to the Horde in Kalimdor. Thrall and Grom, who had fled to Kalimdor, meet up with Jaina Proudmoore, who had apparently decided to take the Prophet's advice and flee with many human armies and families to the western continent to save those that she could. Hellscream leads an unprovoked attack against Jaina and her humans before they can meet together, and Thrall is angered by this. Hellscream and his men are put on lumber duty as punishment for this, where they are assaulted by Cenarius, the wild god of the Night Elves. He changed the one where he's not talking. Hellscream's assaulted by Cenarius, the wild god of the Night Elves, and his Night Elf followers. During this battle, Grom, Hellscream, and his orcs find a fountain that they can feel emanates great power. This fountain actually contains Manaroth, a great demon pit lord, his blood. Grom and his people drink from the fountain, not knowing what it contains, and turn into red, raging, and incredibly powerful orcs, and eventually defeat the Night Elves and kill Cenarius. We then cut to Thrall, who had gone to Stone Talon Peaks in search of an oracle. There, where he was told to meet this great oracle, he meets Cairn and Jaina. Jaina Proudmoore being the leader of the humans, and Cairn, a leader of the Torrent, one that he had helped not very long ago when he landed on Kalimdor. They apparently all seek the same great oracle, who turns out to be Medivh. Medivh convinces all of them to work together against the Burning Legion, but first, they have to stop Grom Hellscream and cleanse him of the demon blood that he and many of the orcs consumed. They do so with relative success, and after this, Thrall and Grom set off to face Manaroth, the one who corrupted them in the first place, and thousands of years ago enslaved the orcs for several centuries.
So predictable. I knew you would come. And I see you brought the mighty Hellscream. His blood is mine. As is your whole misbegotten race. The boy believed you could be saved, but he didn't know what burns within your soul. Within your heart, you know we are the same. blood haze has lifted. The demon's fire has burnt out in my veins. I have freed myself. No, old friend. You freed us all.
And with Grom Hellscream's final breaths, he kills Manaroth, freeing the orcs of any demon's control he has over them, or ever will have. And elsewhere, on Kalimdor, Tyrande, Whisperwind, leader of the Night Elves and priestess of Elune, leads her troops through Ashenvale, near where all these prior events had occurred between Grom and Jaina and her humans. Here we learn that Tyrande, 10,000 years ago, had battled the demons and imprisoned them and their leader Archimonde, but now they've seemingly returned. Sorry, 2 seconds. I do one without singing. Here we go. After learning Archimonde and the Burning Legion have returned, Tyrande goes to awaken the Druids of the Claw, the clan led by her lover Malfurion Stormrage, Illidan's brother. She does so successfully, and after she awakens Malfurion and the Druids, Sorry, I skipped a line. She does so successfully, but battles through demons and undead infested woods to do so. Malfurion, after Tyrande awakens him, tells her that Archimonde must be planning an assault on the World Tree on the top of Mount Highjaw. The two awaken the rest of the Druids and come upon an ancient prison. This prison, Malfurion reminds Tyrande, holds Illidan's Stormrage, Malfurion's brother, who had been imprisoned long, long ago for trying to recreate the Well of Eternity to satisfy his lust for magic.
What is behind this door that worries you, my love?
This door leads to Illidan's prison, Tyrande. We should go. Now.
Illidan? It's been 10,000 years. Could he still be alive? We should free him. He would be the perfect ally against the undead and their demon masters.
No, Tyrande. That beast must never be set free.
But he is your brother.
Be that as it may, he is far too dangerous. I forbid it.
Only the goddess may forbid me anything. I will free Illidan whether you like it or not.
Ah.
Tyrande eventually frees Illidan, and Malfurion leaves, refusing to participate in this. And he goes to awaken the last of the Druids. Illidan, free from his prison, vows to take out one of the leaders of the Burning Legion, the Dread Lord, and the leader of the demons and undead plaguing Kalimdor, Tichondrius. In order to do so, however, Illidan claims that he needs the power of a very ancient artifact, the Skull of Gul'dan. He cleaves through demons to the skull and uses it to turn himself into a powerful demon, and with this newfound power defeats Tichondrius and pushes the demonic forces out of Ashenvale. After returning to the others, Illidan, greeted by an enraged Malfurion who can tell Illidan what Illidan had done, is banished. Malfurion then convinces Tyrande that they will not be able to defeat Archimonde and the Burning Legion on their own. Malfurion convinces her that they have to unite with Jaina and Thrall's people. The three armies head to Mount Hyjal, with Malfurion coming up with a plan to defeat Archimonde. Malfurion intends to let Archimonde accomplish his goal of destroying the World Tree, but he plans to set a trap. And with our help, in the Caverns of Time, Jaina, Thrall, and Tyrande, along with their armies, stall Archimonde and his Burning Legion from ascending Mount Hyjal, buying Malfurion time to set up his trap. When Archimonde reaches the World Tree, at 10% health, Malfurion releases thousands of wisps upon him, all detonating together and impacting him with a great explosion that incinerates him and the World Tree. With Archimonde being pushed back, many dark portals beginning to close, and the world seems seemingly safe for now. However, Illidan, banished to the Outlands, is approached by Kil'jaeden, who convinces him to join forces with him. And Kil'jaeden tasks Illidan to destroy the Lich King. Illidan then summons a Naga army, which are the Highborn, Azshara's dead army long forgotten under the ocean. Maiev Shadowsong, a Night Elf warden and Illidan's original warden, track him back as he returned all across Ashenvale summoning these Naga, and eventually leading them to the tomb of Sargeras, the tomb that Gul'dan failed to excavate. Illidan assaults the tomb and claims the Eye of Sargeras for himself. He plans to use it to destroy the Lich King, and escapes to the ruined Eastern Kingdoms. Maiev, hunting Illidan, now in the Eastern Kingdoms, run into Kael'thas Sunstrider, who is now the prince of what remains of the High Elves. They recently, however, after their slaughter at Silvermoon and the desiccation of the Sunwell, call themselves Blood Elves in honor of their fallen brethren killed by Arthas' assault on Silvermoon. Eventually, Maiev, Tyrande, Malfurion, and even Kael'thas all go after Illidan, and without knowing what he plans to do, and not trusting him, stop his ritual to destroy the Lich King using the Eye of Sargeras. Illidan, defeated, is let go by Tyrande and Malfurion. He opens a portal once again to the Outlands, which is the ruined planet of Draenor, and flees. Kael'thas, Malfurion, Tyrande all separate. Kael'thas, back in the ruins of Lordaeron, as Lord Garithos, a commander of what remains of the human army, attempts to reclaim the city. Kael'thas, fighting the undead, is very quickly overwhelmed. Lady Vashj, and Garithos put Kael'thas in a position where he knew he would most likely die. Garithos is very, very racist to Blood Elves. So Kael'thas, fighting the undead, quickly becoming overwhelmed, is saved by Naga, led by Lady Vosh, Illidan's commander and head of his Naga. Lady Vosh saves Kael'thas and his people and flees. Garithos catches sight of Vosh on the way out and imprisons Kael'thas and his people for siding with them, and plans to execute them. Within the prisons, Vosh breaks them out and portals them all to Outlands to join the Illidari army. Kael'thas and his people, without the Sunwell, are mana-starved, and Illidan offers them demon magic in order to sustain this hunger. The three reclaim the Outlands and even team up with the Broken Draenei, which is what the remaining Draenei call themselves, who are led by Akama, to imprison Magtheridon, who currently occupied the Black Temple. Illidan and his allies do so, imprison Magtheridon under the Black Temple, and Illidan, on a cliff, is visited again by Kil'jaeden and given an ultimatum. He must kill the Lich King, or he himself and all of his people will be killed. Arthas feels in Northrend. In Eastern Kingdoms, feels his powers starting to weaken. He's being sent whispers by the Lich King to quickly come to Northrend. The whispers of the blade tell Arthas that Illidan is planning an assault on the throne. Sylvanas, now the leader of the Forsaken undead, semi-conscious undead who have broken free from the Lich King's clutches, attempt an assassination on the way but fail. Sylvanas takes the Forsaken and claims the ruined capital city for her people. Arthas eventually makes it to Northrend. He teams up with Anubarak, a Crypt Lord in the service of the Lich King, and guides them through Azul Nerub, an underground but forgotten city of the Nerubians, who are conscious, large arachnid people, if you could call them that. Arthas eventually reaches Icecrown. He fights off the Illidari forces, duels Illidan himself, wins but doesn't kill him, ultimately walks into Icecrown, where Ner'zhul's remains are entrapped within his icy prison, draws Frostmourne and plunges it in to the throne where Ner'zhul's remains lie. He joins himself with the frozen armor and the frozen throne, becoming one with Ner'zhul's soul, and becoming the true Lich King as we know him. And that is all the lore we need to know going into Wrath of the Lich King on Monday.